Have you ever felt a quiet sense of relief when plans get canceled? Or found deep comfort in simply staying home, where everything feels just right? If so, you are not alone. In a world that celebrates noise, crowds, and constant activity, choosing stillness is often misunderstood. People might assume it means sadness or loneliness. But what if instead it is a sign of wisdom? A reflection of a life that values peace over pressure. For many of us in our later years, the desire to stay home is not about giving up. It is about finally honoring what truly matters: rest, reflection, and a space that feels like our own. In this video, we will explore 6 heartfelt truths about those who prefer to stay home, not as a way of hiding from the world, but as a way of living more gently, more honestly, and more meaningfully. Truth 1. We're no longer interested in small talk. We crave depth instead. There was a time, perhaps long ago now, when being in the middle of it all felt exciting. The noise of a dinner party, the buzz of a crowded room, voices overlapping, laughter echoing in the background. Back then, it felt like connection. It felt like belonging. But as the years pass, something begins to shift. What once felt energizing starts to feel draining. What once sparked curiosity now stirs restlessness. And the truth becomes harder to ignore. Not every conversation fills us. Not every crowd is nourishing. In fact, many only highlight how disconnected we truly feel. For many older adults, this realization does not come suddenly. It creeps in softly over years. One day, it just makes more sense to stay home than to attend yet another event full of faces that smile politely but do not truly see us. It is not bitterness. It is clarity. When someone prefers to stay home, it is not because they hate people. It is because they have grown to value substance over surface. The noise of empty chatter no longer holds interest. It is not that we cannot talk. It is that we do not want to waste our breath on words that mean nothing. And that can be hard for others to understand, especially in a culture that equates sociability with happiness. Why don't you come out more, they ask, as if showing up physically is the same as showing up emotionally. But when we have lived long enough, we learn. Being surrounded does not always mean being seen. At this stage in life, the currency we value most is presence. Real presence. The kind that shows up in a meaningful phone call, a deep conversation at the kitchen table, or a quiet walk with someone who knows when not to speak. These are the moments that replenish us. Not the clinking of glasses at another gathering that we will forget by morning. And so, we choose home. Because home allows us to have the kind of conversations that matter, even if they are with ourselves. Because home is the place where silence is not awkward. It is sacred. Because the older we get, the more we understand. Peace is not found in the crowd. It is found in the calm. This truth is not about cutting people off. It is about cutting through the noise. Let others keep chasing every invite, every social spark, every room filled with voices. We are not lonely. We are selective. We are not withdrawn. We are discerning. And we have learned that one heartfelt conversation, perhaps over tea or during a slow walk, is worth more than 1,000 clever words spoken in a room too loud to hear ourselves think. Truth 2. Home is where healing begins, and where it stays. There's a certain kind of peace that only arrives once the world outside quiets down. Not the kind you find on vacation, or in a crowded cafe with pleasant background music, but the kind that lives in stillness, in the rustle of leaves outside your window, the creak of your favorite chair, or the sound of your own breath in a room that knows you. For many of us in our later years, home has become more than just where we live. It is where we recover, where we come back to ourselves after a life spent giving so much to others. The truth is, healing does not always look dramatic. It rarely happens on a mountaintop or during some grand revelation. Most often, healing slips in through the cracks of ordinary days, in the warmth of a blanket after a long bath, in making tea just the way we like it, no one rushing us, in sitting quietly with our memories, yes, even the painful ones, and letting them pass like weather. Home offers a kind of medicine that cannot be bottled. It gives us permission to rest without apology, to grieve without audience, and to age without shame. You see, the outside world is not always kind to aging. It celebrates speed and noise. It rewards those who perform, who stay busy, who never pause. But healing requires the opposite. It requires slowness. It requires softness. It requires space to fall apart and slowly come back together without explanation. At home, we are allowed to fall asleep when we are tired, not just when the schedule says so. We can cry without needing to say why. We can feel the aches in our bodies without pretending they are not there. There is no mask to wear, no image to maintain. And for those of us who have lost someone, a partner, a sibling, a lifelong friend, home becomes even more sacred because it is filled with echoes of their laughter, their scent in the linens, their favorite chair left just as it was. The world outside may not understand our grief anymore, but our home does. Our home holds space for it. In the garden, we see life return in seasons. Even the barest tree in winter will bloom again in spring. And so do we, in our own quiet ways. At home, we give ourselves time to soften, to break, to bloom. And maybe we no longer heal the way we once did, not quickly, not all at once, but we do heal. We heal in the making of a slow breakfast. We heal in feeding the birds each morning. We heal in sitting still and letting the world come to us gently. So no, we are not hiding from life when we choose to stay home. We are honoring it. We are tending to our own roots, letting them stretch deeper into the ground that has always held us. And sometimes, the most powerful healing does not need a spotlight. It just needs a room of one's own, a bit of quiet, and the simple knowledge that nothing more is expected except to simply be. Truth 3. Loneliness and solitude are not the same. There are days when the house is so quiet, I can hear the old clock in the hallway ticking, like it has something to say. Sometimes I sit in my chair and wonder, is this loneliness or is this peace? The two often get confused, by others and sometimes by me. People look at a quiet life and assume it's empty. They hear the stillness and call it silence. They see me at home alone and imagine I must be sad, isolated, or waiting for company that never arrives. But that is not the truth. Not the full truth, anyway. Yes, I have known loneliness. I have felt the sting of holidays without certain faces at the table. I have stood in rooms once full of laughter that now echo with memory, but I have also come to know solitude, and it is different, very different. Loneliness is a hunger that hurts. Solitude is a space that heals. Loneliness is absence. Solitude is presence, of self, of thought, of being fully here in my own skin. When I choose to stay home, I am not withdrawing. I am listening to myself, to the seasons, to the quiet wisdom that lives in ordinary moments. I watch the birds at the feeder. I listen to the wind move through the trees. I read a chapter that makes me cry and do not have to explain to anyone why. And yes, there are moments when I miss being needed. Miss the phone ringing just because. Miss the sound of footsteps in the hallway. But that is not the same as needing to be anywhere else. There is richness in being alone when aloneness is chosen. There is clarity in not having to perform, to smile on cue, or to carry a conversation when silence feels more honest. The world, it seems, has grown uncomfortable with quiet. Everything must be filled, updated, posted, shared. But here, in this space that I call mine, there is no performance, just presence. And presence is enough. To those who worry or ask why I do not go out more, know this: I am not afraid of people. I am not avoiding life. I am simply tuned in to something softer, something slower. I am not escaping. I am arriving into myself. If there is loneliness here, it is gentle. It is a longing that does not ache, but hums quietly beneath the surface like a familiar song. And if there is solitude here, it is sacred. It is where I remember who I am outside of roles, expectations, or social obligations. So, next time someone assumes that staying home must mean being lonely, I'll simply smile and say, I am not alone. I am with myself. And that is more than enough. Truth 4. We stay loyal to what we love because we've learned what matters. There is a quiet beauty in doing the same thing over and over again, not out of boredom, but out of reverence. Rewatching a favorite film for the 15th time, using the same teacup every morning, chipped though it may be, cooking the same family recipe, even when there's no one else at the table but you. Some call it routine. Some call it predictable. But for many of us who find comfort in the familiar, it is something else entirely: devotion. As we get older, we begin to understand that the world is full of distractions, things that pull us in, promise more, newer, faster. But in the end, what truly satisfies is not novelty. It is depth. We don't chase what's popular. We return to what is true. You see, when someone prefers to stay home, it doesn't mean they have no interests. In fact, it's usually the opposite. People who spend more time alone often cultivate rich personal passions, things they pour themselves into with care, not for applause or attention, but for the simple joy of doing. Gardening, woodworking, knitting, writing letters by hand, rereading old books and noticing new wisdom tucked between the lines, tending to a collection that has been growing for decades, not for show, but for meaning. There is something sacred in that kind of loyalty. In youth, we may have jumped from hobby to hobby, place to place, person to person. That was curiosity. That was growth. But in later life, we begin to settle, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of rooting down. We commit, not just to routines, but to relationships, not to circles full of noise, but to a few souls who truly see us. The phone may not ring every day, but when it does, it's someone we trust with our whole story. And we show up for them. Quietly, consistently. We don't need the spotlight to be loyal. We show our love in remembering a birthday, in saving an old voicemail, in sending a card with nothing but just thinking of you. This kind of loyalty doesn't announce itself. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. It lives in the everyday, in what we return to again and again, because it brings us back to ourselves. Even our homes reflect this kind of devotion. The same photos hanging on the walls, the same books stacked by the bedside, the same quilt lovingly repaired but never replaced. These aren't signs of clinging to the past. They are signs of honoring it. We hold on to what matters because we know how easily life changes and how precious it is to have something or someone that stays. And so we stay. We stay with what we love. We stay in the routines that soothe us. We stay in relationships that don't require performance. We stay loyal, not because we have to, but because we choose to. The world outside might call it stuck, but we know better. We call it rooted. And like any good tree that has seen many seasons, we have learned this truth. Stability is not stagnation. Familiarity is not failure. And loyalty to our passions, our people, and our peace is a quiet form of freedom. Truth 5. We don't need to be seen to be productive. We just need space to breathe. There was a time when being busy felt like a badge of honor. The full calendar, the early mornings, the meetings, the errands, the constant movement. Somehow being in demand meant being important. And resting, well, resting felt like falling behind, but eventually something shifts. It might be after retirement, or after a major loss, or simply after enough years of running that you finally sit still and ask, what am I running toward, and what am I running from? For those of us in the later chapters of life, we begin to see things differently. We no longer equate activity with worth. We no longer measure our value by how much we do, how many people need us, or how fast we can respond. We begin to understand presence is not performance, and doing less does not mean becoming less. That's why staying home becomes so meaningful. Not as an escape, but as a return to ourselves, to our own rhythm, to the kind of productivity that can't be measured by clocks or checklists. You see, the modern world moves fast. Too fast. It rewards multitasking, constant notifications, quick replies. But real living doesn't happen in notifications. It happens in moments. Moments that are easy to miss when we're always on the move. At home, we can move at the speed of breath. For those who still work or volunteer in retirement, home becomes a place of flow. There's no long commute, no fluorescent lights, no pressure to look busy. There's just the work itself, done with care, without rush, with attention. Even outside of formal work, many of us still create every day. We knit, we paint, we write, we build, we organize, we solve. We mentor our grandchildren over the phone. We care for others in quiet, invisible ways. Just because it's not paid doesn't mean it's not meaningful. And here's the truth. No one says out loud, sometimes doing nothing is the most productive thing we can do. Sitting quietly with a memory, watching the wind move through the trees, letting the body rest without guilt, letting the soul catch up after years of rushing. Home gives us that space to work, to think, to breathe, to be. No need to wear the right clothes, no need to explain ourselves, just enough room to remember who we are when we're not being watched, measured, or managed. The world still tries to tell us, stay relevant, stay visible. But relevance is not about staying online. It's about staying connected to what really matters. And visibility? That's for those still seeking validation. We've earned the right to live in peace, without performance, without pretense. So when someone asks, don't you get bored staying home? We can answer with a smile. Not at all. I've simply traded the noise for meaning. We may no longer rush to prove ourselves, but that does not mean we've stopped growing, serving, or living fully. We've just chosen to do it from a place that finally feels like enough. Truth 6. We carry a whole world within us, and that's more than enough. There comes a point in life when we realize something quietly profound. We no longer need to go far to feel full, because we carry a whole world inside us. In our younger years, we sought so much from the outside: adventure, validation, movement. We looked to the world for answers, direction, even identity. And that seeking was necessary. It built who we became. But with time, and time has its own way of teaching, we discover that many of the things we once searched for were always within us. They were just waiting for us to slow down long enough to hear them. That's why, for many of us, home is not just a preference. It's a gateway to the life within. Here, in the stillness of familiar walls and gentle light, we can finally turn inward without fear. Not to hide, but to listen. We reflect, we write, we pray. We remember, not just the highlights, but the quiet details. The way sunlight hit the window in our childhood bedroom, the voice of someone long gone, the laughter shared on an ordinary Tuesday that became unforgettable. We make peace with our past, our regrets, our younger selves. We offer forgiveness to others, and more importantly, to ourselves. We unearth dreams we buried when life got busy. And sometimes, we bring them back to life in small sacred ways. This inner life is not empty. It is abundant, rich with layers and colors that the outer world often misses. And no, we do not always need to speak of it. Sometimes just sitting with it, fully, quietly, is more than enough. Psychologists speak of emotional regulation, inner resilience, and post-retirement identity. But we know it by other names: wisdom, presence, soul. Some may look at us, at our quiet routines, our time spent alone, and think we've slowed down too much. They may assume we are bored, disconnected, or fading, but they do not see what we see. They do not feel the depth of silence that comforts rather than haunts. They do not know the joy of rereading a book and finding new meaning each time. They have not tasted the satisfaction of finishing a puzzle, knitting a scarf, or watching the seasons change from the same window you've looked out of for 30 years. There is a richness in slowness, a fullness in being with ourselves that cannot be bought, streamed, or scheduled. We are not retreating from life. We are sinking into it, deeper than ever before. And that is something to honor, not apologize for. So when someone asks, "How can you stand being home so much?" we can gently reply, "I don't just stay home. I live here, within these walls and within myself. And it is not empty. It is everything." Because the final truth is this: we may no longer crave the stimulation of the outside world, but the world within us, it continues to grow, quietly, beautifully, and without end. We are not fading. We are rooting. There's a quiet kind of life that few people talk about. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't look impressive from the outside, but it's rich, real, steady. And for many of us, it begins the moment we stop chasing the noise and start listening to the stillness. Staying home is not the absence of living. It's the return to a life that no longer needs proving, no longer needs an audience, no longer runs on obligation or performance. Some will never understand why we choose the same chair, the same view, the same slow mornings, why we decline the invitation or leave the party early, or feel most alive in the silence of our own space. But we understand, because home is not what we're stuck in. It's what we've chosen. A soft landing after a long climb, a sacred space that holds our stories, our sorrows, our strength. And in this season of life, that's more than enough. So if you've ever been told you're too quiet, too withdrawn, too set in your ways, know this: you are not too much of anything. You are enough, exactly as you are. With your quiet habits, your loyal routines, your treasured memories, your deep inner world. You are not fading. You are rooting, deeper, steadier, stronger. And maybe, just maybe, this quiet life you've created is not small at all. It is vast in ways only the heart can measure.